specification that the defendant committed murder by his own hand. We call Sergeant James S. Gray.
Sergeant James S. Gray.
Please, the court, we do not see that name on our witness list.
Sergeant Gray was not listed because it was uncertain his release was going to be arranged in time. He's attached to General Thompson's headquarters at Nashville.
No objection.
Witness may be sworn. Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right arm. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Sergeant Gray, what is your regiment?
7th Illinois Cavalry, Company B, sir.
How long have you been in the service?
In my last term, 2 years and 1 month.
And how long were you at Andersonville, Sergeant?
I was taken to Andersonville on the 10th of June, 1864, and remained there till November.
Do you know anything about the defendant's works, having shot a prisoner of war there at any time?
He shot a young fellow named William Stewart, a private in the 9th Minnesota Infantry.
State circumstance.
Stewart and I took the body out to the dead house.
Explain how you get out.
Regulations were that whenever a man died, prisoners could be detailed to take the body out.
Continue, sir.
Well, sir, I had begged for the chance to take that body out, and was picked with Stewart to do so. We went up to the gate and was passed out with a guard. It was my intention, I don't know whether it was Stewart's or not, to try to make my escape again. We went up to the dead house, but not into that place, for the bodies were all pulled up like cordwood, and extended out from it for about 50 yards. Colonel Wirtz rode up and asked us what we were doing out there. Stewart replied, we were there to take a body out. Wirtz said it was a lie, that we were trying to make our escape. Stewart said it was not so. We were there for purpose stated. Wirtz said, if you say that again, I'll blow your brains out. Stewart repeated what he had said. Wirtz then knocked him down, stomped him, pulled out his revolver, and shot him.
Is that the man?
Yes.
Look close, Sergeant. Make sure. I'll give you the chance to take back that line before they break my witness.
You knocked him down and shot him dead.
That will be all.
I ask for a few moments to confer with the defendant. We have no preparation for this witness. Quick, who's Gray?
It's no use.
Who is Gray?
I don't know.
What about Stewart?
There was no William Stewart.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Sergeant, describe once again this so-called Stewart's death.
Captain Wirtz rode up and dismounted and asked us by what authority we were out there. Stewart replied, we were out there by proper authority.
So Captain Wirtz knocked him down and shot him simply because he said he was out there by proper authority?
Whether he shot him because of what he said or because it was a Yankee, I don't know. I leave that up to him. All I know is what Stewart said to him.
There were some guards about when this so-called murder occurred, were there not?
I recall some.
And did you talk to the guards after Stewart was killed?
I never spoke to Johnny Reb if I didn't have to.
How well did you know Stewart?
We were in the same prison squad together.
And under what circumstances did he oblige you with his name and regiment?
I don't recollect exactly.
Describe this William Stewart.
All looked alike there, all thinned out, not to be recognized by their own mothers.
So you cannot describe him. You know his name and regiment, and you talk to him, but you cannot describe this man. Did he hide his face from you when you were talking to him? Oh, I know, all thinned out so as not to be recognized by their own mothers. Can you name any third person who can identify this William Stewart?
No.
No? What's that answer supposed to mean? There were 90 men in that prison squad with you and Stewart. Then somebody had to know that he was from the 9th Minnesota and could identify him.
Counsel, you happen to mention his name and regiment to me.
How fortunate for the prosecution, which until now has lacked a clear criminal incident. It has dredged up you as the sole witness to the murder of a man having at least the name. Sergeant, do you believe in an afterlife and that man's sins, including the sin of lying, will there be punished?
I believe there is such a thing as a punishment after death.
You ever been arrested for a criminal offense?
No, sir.
I gather you lack Army life, seeing as you re-enlisted.
I would say so.
After all, the Army feeds you and keeps you comfortable, and judging by your sergeant stripes, you are considered by your superiors to be a good soldier, one who knows what to do without being told in so many words.
A man needs to know what is expected of him.
So if you felt, even if you weren't told, what to do in some situation, you'd carry out, wouldn't you?
Certainly.
And if you felt, even if you weren't told, what the Army's real concern was in some situation, and you understood that to mean that you were to lie.
Finish your question along that line, Mr. Baker, and you will be in contempt.
Withdrawn. Sergeant, what did you do before entering the Army?
Farmed some, ran dogs,
Ran dogs.
in hunting, and so forth.
Well, where did you do that kind of work?
Illinois, Indiana, Virginia.
Virginia. For what purpose did you run your dog pack in Virginia? Was it by chance to track down runaway slaves?
Yes, sir.
I take it was more profitable to track down runaway slaves in Virginia than to hunt deer in Indiana.
Yes, sir. Being a Negro was valuable property. He had to be brought back alive.
Tell me something, Sergeant. Did this valuable property ever make human sounds when you caught it? Hoping that you would let it find freedom?
I don't remember.
Well then, human feelings must be put aside sometimes, mustn't they? And the truth must be put aside sometimes too. And when you said you saw Lords kill a man named Stewart at Andersonville, you were lying, weren't you?
I saw that happen as I have stated it.
That'll be all.
Sergeant Gray, were you lying when you said you saw Words kill a man named Stewart?
I saw that happen as I have stated it.
Sergeant, did you see Words kill a man named Stewart, or did you hear about something like that?
I saw that happen as I have stated it, sir.
That will be all. The witness may step down. Has the judge advocate finally concluded his case? Yes, sir. The defense ready?
Yes. If it please the court, since defense counsel feels that the only charge worth refuting is that of murder,
The court is not interested in your judgment of the charges.
we will withdraw our entire list of witnesses and will in its place put on the stand but one witness.
One witness.
Questioning will take but a few moments and will constitute the entire defense case.
Who is this witness?
He's here in the room. Dr. Ford, the surgeon in charge of the old Capitol Jail, where the defendant has been held since the beginning of the trial.
Let Dr. Ford take the stand.
Please place that pen on the Bible and raise right arm. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Dr. Ford, have you for some time past been in the habit of seeing the defendant?
Yes, sir. Ever since June, I believe. He had been under my care, let's say.
Have you during that time had the opportunity to examine his right arm? And had you examined today.
Yes, sir.
What do you find to be the condition of his right arm?
It appears to be swollen and inflamed, and ulcerated in 3 places, and it appears to have been broken.
The fingers of his right hand.
2 fingers, the little and the next, are slightly contracted. The contraction is due to the injury of the nerves leading down to the fingers.
Have you had the opportunity to examine his left shoulder?
Yes, sir. A portion of it is dead. There is a large scar on the left shoulder. It was carried away during the war wound, I suppose. Only the front part of the deltoid muscle remained.
Doctor, how does that affect the strength of the arm?
He might be able to strike out with the forearm from the elbow, but he could not elevate the whole arm.
Doctor, as to his right arm, would he be able to push or knock a man down?
I should think him incapable of doing that with either arm, not without doing himself great injury.
Would he be able to use light or heavy instrument with any force? Would he be able to pull the trigger, much alone suffer the recoil of heavy revolver?
No, not like.
And as to his condition 1 year ago in 1864,
I've spoken with Dr. Bates, who was at Andersonville, and examined works at the defendant's request, and he confirms my opinion that his condition was no better in 1864 than it is now.
so he could not have knocked down this so-called William Stewart.
No, I don't see how.
He could not have pulled the trigger.
As I have said,
He could not have killed the man. Thank you. The defense rests.
Will the judge advocate cross-examine?
Dr. Ford has testified to Mr. Wirtz's physical condition as he saw it. We are not here to dispute medical findings. No cross-examination. But
Thank you, Dr. Ford. You may step down.
What is it? Is it all finished? I have not had the chance to speak.
We will convene the day after tomorrow to hear government and defense summation.
please, the court will ask for continuance.
Continuing.
Until tomorrow morning, the judge advocate would like to determine if there is something pertinent to this trial.
Does the judge advocate wish to bring forth new evidence?
Possibly.
Well, the defense will welcome new evidence, particularly on the charge of violent murder against the man who cannot raise his arms.
Lest the government considers new witnesses, we must consider the presentation of evidence to be complete.
We do not feel that the situation at Andersonville has been thoroughly explored. That is why we ask for continuance. We feel there's more to be discovered, more to be said about what took place there.
I agree, yes, for once I agree with the judge.
Does the defendant wish to take the stand in his own behalf?
What?
What? No, the defendant will not take the stand.
Of course, he's not legally bound to do so. But it seems to the judge advocate he may wish to make the position clearer than anyone else can possibly do for him.
What is the judge advocate trying to do?
I think this, but
He addresses the defendant over the head of counsel.
I would like to know what the judge advocate is saying, that I might wish to make my position clear.
You may not speak unless you take the stand, Mr. Wirtz. The judge advocate is asking if you wish to take the stand. You have the right to do so, but you cannot be compelled to do so. You have that right, but we suggest you listen to counsel.
Are you out of your mind?
I don't understand what's come over you. This legal game has been played back and forth, and I am to die without a word for myself.
Listen.
I must explain.
Listen, the evidence that they've offered is taken from start to finish. They know that. Let them bring in their guilty verdict, but then it must go to the president, who made pardons. He values the reputation of his government. It's your only chance.
I say no chance, no chance.
Words, listen to Baker.
You will not take the stand.
I was a man like I was a man, and I wish to show that.
You'll face Chipman alone.
Do you understand? Alone.
Yes, alone. Because I have been alone. And neither you nor anyone here has been concerned for me as a man. And now, I might wish to speak. Since the judge advocate wishes me to do so.
Don't understand you, Mr. Wirtz. You may or may not take the stand as you wish. That has nothing to do with what the judge advocate wishes.
And I say I might wish to do that. Since I am the one who strangles here, I might wish to do that. I do not understand what is the difficulty. So the judge advocate wants me to take the stand.
The judge advocate cannot influence you to do that. He is not your counsel.
I know that. He is my worst enemy. He wishes to destroy me. Take the stand on my own behalf, eh, Colonel?
On your own behalf.
Captain Wirtz, are you dispensing with defense counsel?
Mr. Wirtz, if you take the stand, you will speak for yourself. But after that, I warn you, I will try to search you out to the bottom of your soul.
Huh? You think you could do that?
I can try.
Will the defendant state whether or not he wishes to take the stand?
General? Ah, you hear that? My worst enemy. What does he say? He will search me out to the bottom of my soul.
Chief Midshipman's here to see.
I am to die. I must take the stand. I have been made a monster in the eyes of my children. I die with that mark on me if I do not speak up, and I will not have it that way. I must give them my words so they can say their father was a man like other men. Do you understand? You will examine, and then I will fight him.
And if you do take the stand, how will I keep you from saying more than you should?
But you see, Baker, I must fight him. I must fight him.
The defendant will take the stand on his own behalf.
He understands that he is not required to do so.
He understands and wishes to do so.
You may take the stand, Mr. Wirtz.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Captain Wirtz, you are a naturalized citizen of the United States, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Zurich, Switzerland in 1822.
In what year did you arrive in the United States?
In 1849,
Describe briefly your activities prior to the outbreak of the war.
I worked first in the hills of Lawrence, Massachusetts, but not doing well there, moved to various parts of the United States with my family. I lived for a while in Louisiana, and later in Louisville, Kentucky, and was there when the war broke out.
State your war record prior to your appointment as superintendent of the Andersonville prison camp.
Yes, sir. I enlisted in the Confederacy as a private, but was later made a lieutenant, having previous experience abroad. I was given that assignment as superintendent of Andersonville by General Winder. And any statement to the contrary.
Captain, was the food at first supplied sufficient to meet the needs of prisoners?
Yes. At first I was given ample supplies to provide each prisoner a ration, which was the same ration is given to every Confederate soldier as is accustomed. It included bacon or fresh baked bread daily. If not bacon, it was beef. Those men did not starve.
Captain, state the circumstances under which that situation changed.
It began to change for worse around March, when we began to receive prisoners by the thousands, but not an increase in the ration. So naturally I had to cut down more and more. I wrote to General Winder about that.
When did you write that letter, sir?
Sometime in May 1864.
I have here a letter dated May 26, 1864, from Captain Wirtz to General Winder.
Presented to the court.
May be entered in the record.
Letter of May 26, 1864, offered to the defense.
Exhibit 9 to the defense.
Captain Wirtz, tell us about that letter.
I wrote to General Winder about the lack of food and requested additional supplies.
Now, Captain, did General Winder reply to that letter?
Yes, he did so in person on one of his visits to the camp. He said that we were treating our prisoners just as well as the enemy took care of our men in their hands. He said he had received reports that our men were not being well treated, particularly at a camp at Elmira, New York, as they were dying like flies. And he was in a temple, and he said that closed the subject. Being an inferior officer, I could hardly pursue the matter further. General, I would like to tell you about the drummer boys.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment, Captain. Tell the court about the origin of the deadline.
Yes, as to that deadline. Well, in that conversation to General Winder, I said that the prisoners were getting desperate because of the lack of food, and consequently the guards were nervous hearing a rush on the walls, and there was bound to be trouble. So I requested more guards to quiet the prisoners with a show of strength, but he said that men could not be spared. It was my responsibility to keep them from escaping, so I suggested that in a line to General Winder, and he approved that line. General, I need to tell you about the drummer boys, which they...
Very well. Tell the court about those drummer boys.
Yes. There were 60 or 70 of them, drummer boys, little bits of boys, no more than children. And I felt bad that they should have to suffer that, having children of my own. So I asked them to take an oath not to try to escape, and they did. So I put them on parole, and they lived outside the camp walls. I assigned them to take blackberries to provide additional food for the prisoners, which, being boys, they ate what they picked themselves. But that is not all that I did there.
Captain, tell us about Father Whalen.
Yes, I allowed all priests and ministers to enter the camp. And Father Whalen of the Roman Catholic Church came many times bringing fresh bread, and I allowed him to distribute that to all prisoners, black and white. I believe that all religion should be...
Captain, tell us about those women who tried to bring food into the camp.
Yes. At first, General Winder graciously consented to allow that food in. But when those women were about to do so, he received some bad war news that Sheridan was burning crops and farmhouses in the Shenandoah Valley. And then he flew into a rage and said that food could not be brought in. As an inferior officer, I could hardly override his orders. And so that place remained my responsibility, and solely on my head to prevent...
Did you try to get relief at that?
I am not finished! I have said that place was solely on my head, but I had to keep order there and to prevent the men from escaping. It was difficult to keep order since they kept crying. Naturally, they had the right to cry. But I had my duty, which was to prevent them.
What you did, tried to get relieved of that assignment, did you not?
Yes. I wrote to General Winder about that.
I have a letter here dated May 19, 1864 from Captain Wirtz to General Winder in which he requests that he be relieved of his assignment at Andersonville.
Submitted to the defense.
May be entered.
Letter of May 19, 1864, offered to the defense.
Exhibit 10, the defense.
Captain Wirtz, did you strike down and shoot a prisoner of war named William Stewart?
There was no Wilhelm Stewart. That is a lie. There was no Wilhelm Stewart.
Did you knock down and kill any prisoner of war?
No, sir. I never did that. I could not physically do that.
At the cessation of hostilities, when you were arrested, were you trying to make any escape?
No, I saw no reason to do that. I was living outside the stockade, and hearing of the general pardon was on the way back to Louisville with my family. A major of General Wilson's staff entered and put me under arrest. I was taken away and held prisoner. I soon understood that awful charge against me was that my fate was to hang.
Thank you, Captain. That'll be all.
Am I not to be asked my conception of military duty?
Thank you, Captain.
I wish to state how I understand military rules.
Very well. Explain to the court your understanding of the military code.
That one does as he is ordered, that he keeps his feelings to himself, that he does not play the heroic game which some people not in his position think he could, but obeys. He does not concern himself with the policies of his superiors, but obeys. He does his assigned duty and obeys. And when the order to charge is given, he obeys. And when order to keep prisoners, he obeys. And if in doing so he must die, then he must die.
Your witness, Colonel.
You have explained your sense of duty clearly, Mr. Words. When an officer is ordered to keep prisoners, he obeys,
Yes, sir.
meaning that he must keep them from escaping,
That is one of the things, yes.
meaning that he must keep them alive.
As within his power, yes.
And which did you regard as more important, to keep them from escaping or to keep them alive?
According to regulations, to keep them alive and to prevent them from escaping.
One neither more nor less important in your mind.
Both equal.
You say you never at any time killed a prisoner of war.
It has been demonstrated I could
I
not.
asked you, sir, directly. Did you or did you not?
No, sir, I never did that.
In your letter of May 26, 1864, in which you tell General Winder you're increasing difficulties, I also know you asked him to consider a promotion for you from captain to major. Now, what were you more concerned with when you wrote that letter? The promotion or the old Crowley?
There's nothing wrong in that letter to request a
And
promotion.
in that letter asking for a transfer, you make a point of your illness as to the reason.
To make it indirect. Otherwise, General Winder might not
You
have
were,
worked that
in
request.
fact, seeking medical attention when you wrote that letter, weren't you?
I wanted to get away from that assignment.
You say what happened at Andersonville is beyond your power to avert.
Yes.
And in performing your duties, you inspected the stockade. At times, I imagine, from the walls where the sentry stood. And you could look down into that. Well, how would you describe it, may I ask?
It has been described as
Sort of hell?
indescribable, sir. Indescribable. But the colonel remembers about the Burma boys I put on parole and let them take theirs outside the box.
That is in your favor.
Don't you, sir?
Although it is interesting you keep referring to that act. As if there was so much more you dare not remember.
You twist things, sir. I let Father Bacon bring
You
bread.
enter your home from work every morning?
Yes.
And I take it you are a normal husband and father, concerned with teaching your children the common virtues?
Particularly in a religious way, yes.
And you saw nothing strange in going from your home to grace at meals, to go to your job of overseeing the dying of those men?
Objection!
Withdrawn. You have said that keeping those men alive was as important in your mind as the need to keep them from escaping.
Yes.
The food was wormy and rotten. Did you not think to send out foragers to commandeer supplies from Georgia farmers?
It would have been illegal.
You could have signed vouchers,
I was not authorized.
payable by the Confederacy.
Not authorized, sir.
Sent out squads of prisoners to collect firewood.
They would escape.
Under guard.
There were not enough guards.
Large stockade.
The size wasn't proscribed.
Allow those prisoners, among whom were carpenters, masons, and mechanics of all sorts, to build shelters which would have kept them alive.
As I have said, sir, I was not authorized.
Those measures would have saved lives.
I don't know how many.
Will say only one! Would you say one single human life is precious, Mr. Works?
I do not follow. It would have been illegal for me to do the things you say.
But morally right, Mr. Works? Objection!
Court does not see how the judge advocate's questioning relates to the issue of conspiracy.
observe that I do like most men when I can.
When you can? When you could not deserve moral considerations at Andersonville?
That was General Winter's responsibility, not mine.
You consider that General Winter's responsibility because he was your military superior?
Yes,
And how far over you did you deem his authority to extend?
to all circumstances, considering it was a military war situation.
To all circumstances. Are you certain of that?
I am absolutely certain.
Then had he in that military war situation ordered you to slaughter one of your own children without giving you an explanation, would you have done that?
That is ridiculous.
Would you have done that?
That is ridiculous. I do not
Would you
answer.
have done that?
No.
Why not?
It would have been an insane order.
Yes! Insane. Or inhuman. Or immoral. Therefore, man does indeed make some inner judgment as to the orders he obeys.
Judge Advocate will hold. Court has stated more than once it is not disposed to consider the moral issue relating to soldierly conduct. It has indicated to the Judge Advocate that we are on extremely delicate ground at any time we enter into the circumstances in which officers may disobey their military superiors. However, now, the Judge Advocate feels he must enter that area. He will first furnish a legal basis for that line of questioning or withdraw it.
Please the court, we will endeavor
The
to...
Judge Advocate must in advance be to furnish a legal
The
basis.
Judge Advocate respectfully urges that the court does...
Here's the legal basis for this line of questioning.
If it please the court. Military courts, judging war crimes, are governed by both the criminal code and by the broader, more general code of universal international law. In most cases that come before them, they will judge specific acts in which the nature and degree of offense is determinable without great difficulty. But on rare occasions, cases occur demanding from a court a more searching inquiry. Should the court allow such broad inquiry, it becomes more than a court of record in a particular case. It becomes a supreme tribunal, willing to peer into the very heart of human conduct. The Judge Advocate urges that the court does not in advance limit nor narrowly define the basis for questioning. Should the court insist on such a basis, we are through with the witness.
Does the Judge Advocate offer the court alternatives?
Did not mean to imply that.
The court is flattered to think that it may take on the mantle of a supreme tribunal, but it is still a military court.
Please the court,
No, Colonel, I'm not through. The court grants that it may be philosophically true that men have the human right to judge the commands of their superiors, but in practice, one does so at his peril.
at its peril. Yes, sir.
We would want that the peril of that line of questioning be understood most clearly. We have a question for the Judge Advocate, which he may or may not answer. He, of course, is not on trial here. Question is, what is it that an honest man fights for when he takes up arms for his country? Is it the state or the moral principle inherent to that state? And if the state and the principle are not one, is he bound not to fight for that state and indeed to fight against it? The Judge Advocate did not answer, or we will make the question more particular. If, at the outbreak of the war, the government of the so-called Confederacy had stood on the moral principle of freedom for the black man, and the government of the United States had stood for slavery, would a man have been bound on moral grounds to follow the dictates of conscience, even to the point of taking up arms against the government of the United States?
It is inconceivable to me
That is not the question.
the situation could not
That
possibly...
is not the question.
He would have been bound to follow the dictates of his conscience.
Even to the point of taking up arms against the government of the United States?
Yes.
societies, that has meant death. In our society, it may mean merely the deprivation of status, contempt of his fellows, exile in the midst of his countrymen. I take it the Colonel understands my meaning,
He understands what the court is saying.
and yet he feels he must still enter that dangerous area.
General, I do not enter this area of my own free will. I enter it because I have been forced to it by the nature of this case. Lately, we have emerged from a terrible and bloody war, and that war has spawned the most sinister and curious crime. Men in the thousands, 14,000 men have been sent to their death. Not like bullets on a battlefield, but in a subtle, furtive, hidden manner. We have, in the course of this trial, examined, as it were, the outward appearance of hell. Walls, deadlines, swamp, dogs, burning heat and freezing cold. But we have not gotten to the heart of it. We are faced now with the necessity of further exploring into, let us say it again, hell. I put it to this court that we owe it to the 14,000 men who died there, to those who mourned them, something so true as to put us head and shoulders above politics, above sectionalism, above the bitterness in our own hearts. I admit to entering this room with that bitterness in myself. I admit to a mood of vengeance. I would now like to go beyond that if I could. As we say, life is precious. And as we cling to our humanity by our fingernails in this world, by our fingernails, let us have a human victory in this room.
Court is not unmoved. Colonel considers it as primary to the presentation of his case, moral issue of disobedience to a superior officer.
Yes, sir.
The judge advocate may continue.
The judge advocate may continue. Defense counsel is amazed that the court does not now recognize there's no legal case here. To attempt to connect willful obedience to orders with conspiracy is impossible. And no fine-sounding statement about universal law or supreme tribunal can bridge the unbridgeable. The court knows the judge advocate cannot possibly make that connection, and yet it allows him to proceed with it should forthwith dismiss the defendant.
Counsel ordering the court to do that?
No. But he submits there is no legal case here.
The judge advocate may continue. Bearing in mind, the court may conclude at any time that it feels there is nothing more to be gained from this line of questioning.
Mr. Works, we have said that a man does make some inner judgment as to the orders he obeys. That implies that if those orders offend his humanity and not, he does not have to obey them. General Winter's authority over you is not absolute. And so the question is, why did you obey?
Do I have to answer that? Did not understand my assignment in Andersonville that day. I don't understand what happens here. I sought only in the normal way to obey him since he was my military superior.
But not your moral superior. No man has the authority over the soul of another. And as we are men, we own our own souls. And as we own them, we are equal as men. The general, the private, the professor, the hod carrier. We are equal as men, sir. As every man alive, as he is a man, knows that. As you in your heart knew that.
That is
But as that situation had become a grossly immoral situation, and as General Winter was not your moral superior, we did not have to obey. And so the question remains,
certainly have been court-martialed. And if my superiors wished, considering it was a time of war, and that war had grown to a desperate, bitter stage in which the word traitor could have been sounded in a moment, I might have been executed.
It might have at least been for a reason. You might have saved 14,000 lives. Were you afraid?
I, a soldier, afraid?
And the question still is, why did you obey?
What heroic thing should I have done in Andersonville? I, an ordinary man like other men.
Mr. Wirtz, we who are born into the human race are elected to an extraordinary role in the scheme of things. We are endowed with reason, and therefore with personal responsibility for our acts. A man may give to authorities over him many things, but not what we call his soul, sir. Not his immortal soul. So the question still is, why did you obey?
I will say it clearly, for the last time. To me, it was a military war situation.
That was not a military situation, Mr. Wirtz. Those helpless unarmed men were no longer the enemy, no matter what Winder said. Here was no longer a question of North and South, no longer a question of war, only a question of human needs. Chandler saw that. The women who brought food for those starving men, they saw that. Where was your conscience then?
Where?
General Winder's pockets with his keys, tobacco, money, worth no more than any of those things?
You speak high, Colonel. High. Ask them in this room if they would have done different than me. Ask them. You are all the victors here and make the morality for the losers.
The victor makes the morality because the loser cannot.
And I spit on that morality. I spit on it. Ask them in this room if they would have done different than me. Ask them.
And if they could not, then we must shudder for the world we live in. Think what may happen when one man owns the conscience of many men. The prospect before us is then a world of Andersonvilles. The jailer concerned with only obeying the commands of his master. And freed of his conscience, fearing only the authority to which he has surrendered his soul. Might not the jailer commit murder then?
I did not commit
You
murder.
did not kill William Stewart.
There was no William Stewart.
You were never in a fury with those men. Fury great enough to overcome the weakness of your arm.
It is as the doctor says.
Now, who do you dare say that? You and I have been on a battlefield. We have seen men holding their bowels in their hands, their legs broken, still moving forward. You raised those arms.
No.
Yes! You were in a fury when you rode out with that dog pack. And when you caught those men, you raised those two dead arms.
No!
And how did you raise that hard-out horse to the left? And how to the right? And how bring down his head when he reared it? Not with those two dead arms!
Possibly. I raise my arm sometimes, yes. But I did not kill Wilhelm Stewart, because so help me God, there was no Wilhelm Stewart.
Very well. You will leave Mr. Stewart aside. You had to obey orders which you knew were killing men, didn't you?
I had to obey.
Did you know that to obey was to kill men? To disobey was to save them.
Simply, I could not disobey. I did my duty as I saw it. I have made that clear. And you badger me. Any which way I explain it, it will not do for you. And you continue to badger me. I have made it clear that I had to keep order there, to report monthly the number of prisoners and those escaping, and to report that to General Winder and the War Department. But you continue to batter me. I have made it clear, and you will not let go. I had to keep the prisoners from escaping, and I had to report that in writing. That was my duty. Even though I did not have enough guards, that did not excuse me. So I found that job overwhelming. Isn't that clear? And it was overwhelming. But I had to find ways and means to prevent those escapes. That was my duty. It was solely on my head. So it went. I preventing, they trying. I preventing, they trying. And no move completely successful to stop them. Nothing could stop them. That deadline, that did not stop them. Cannons mounted on the wall, that did not stop them. Burrowing, tunneling under the walls, into night digging, sometimes crushed on the way to the walls, and they made the mistake too closely underneath. But others continuing, tracked down by dogs, and trying again. I having to anticipate, finding their tunnels, learning their tricks. Blacking their faces as niggers to pass out of the stockade carrying the dead bodies, driving the guards with greenbacks. Nothing could stop them from trying. Digging. At the night I'm awake. I do not need to see them to know what they are doing. Digging is a hopeless effort to escape. Digging, crawling like rats.
Rats may die, and one may have no compunction about rats.
Yes, rats, so to speak. Ah, the cheap lawyer's trick.
Very well. Cheap lawyer's trick. But they were not rats to you. They were no longer men to you. In your mind, you had canceled them out as men, and you made them less than men. And then you might die, and one may not have to suffer over that, did you? Why did you try to commit suicide in yourself? Because you feel nothing? Because you have no human feeling left? You cannot endure feeling nothing? Speak too much of your children. Because you've already asked them in your mind, should I have done my duty? Or should I have given a man a drink of water? You heard their answer. Yes. You wish to die. I ask you one last time, Mr. Wirtz. Why? And it was not fear of court-martial, or dismissal, or any external thing. Why? Inside yourself, couldn't you disobey?
Simply I could not. I did not have the feelings to do that. I did not have the strength of feeling to do that. I could not disobey.
Government press.
I'm a good old rebel, now that you're gone. For this battle and of freedom, I do not care down. I'm a
charged that the prisoner did, with others, conspire to destroy the lives of soldiers in the military service of the United States in violation of the laws and customs of war, guilty. And on the various specifications that he aided and abetted murder and did commit murder, guilty. And the court do therefore sentence him, the said Henry Wirtz, to be hanged from the neck till he be dead, at such time and place as the President of the United States may direct. 2/3 of the members of this court concurring therein. The business of this military court being now terminated, we declare the court dissolved.
Well, I'll say this for it, Colonel. At least you fought on your own terms.
I asked for his guilt, not his death.
But he dies anyway. His life is a Union death. No matter you fought so stubbornly to purify the occasion, it was a political verdict, whatever you said.
I charged him for what he is. Perhaps deep down the court did too.
Perhaps. It was a worthy effort, though it hasn't anything to do with the real world. Men will go on as they are, subject to fear, and so subject to power and authority. And how do we change that slavery? It's of man's very nature.
Is it?
Isn't it?
I don't know. We tried.
We redecorate that beast in all sorts of political coats, hoping to change it. But is it to be changed?
We tried. We tried.
I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how American civilization now leans upon the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution.